All right, very good. All right, we're going to start our first virtual program. Again, this is one that I gave at a GARS meeting about 3 years ago, and we've updated with a little bit of new material in there as well. But I know we've got a lot of new folks that have joined the club since we gave that program several years ago, so hopefully it'll be useful for you. One of the things in starting out is that if you're new, especially new to amateur radio, just got your ticket, we're always asked the questions, do I need to get a portable or an HT? And that is a valid question. And a lot of it depends on what you want to do. And that's usually how I answer the question. What are you looking to do? Are you wanting to be mobile? Are you wanting to be just a base station? Or do you want to be a handheld? And there's a lot of options that you can do there. Even be a mobile with a handheld with an outside antenna and a separate speaker mic as well. And the next question always is, what do you want to really, what modes do you want to really accomplish? And some of these are multiple capabilities. In fact, most of the radios, in fact, will do standard FM as well as one of the digital modes, depending on which model that you choose. So for example, the ICOM D-Star capable radios will do FM and D-Star. The Yaesu radios will do FM and Fusion. DMR radios will usually do that as well. And so with the others, you usually have a combination, so you're not locked into just one of the digital modes, but it may be worth exploring. We'll talk about front panel programming versus programming software. We'll spend a little time on that. And how many memories do you need? It's kind of interesting with some of the new radios anyway. Memories are kind of a relative thing as we go through that. Now, I think this may have been a former GARS member's mobile installation. I won't name any names, but I think they probably took their radios to an extreme. So if you're looking at mobile versus portable, as I said, how many memories do you need? In some of the new radios, in fact, the memories that you would use for standard programming are kind of irrelevant because they may find a repeater based on nearest repeater, your location, your current location, because GPS is in there as well. And let me make sure I'm going back to chat where I can watch. I don't know whether Norm is on tonight's call or not, but someone mentioned that, is this a picture of Norm's garage? No, I think it may be one of his vehicles, but we won't go there. All right, can I store and select different memory loads? You know, that's a nice feature of some of the new, both handhelds and mobiles. They have an SD card of various sizes, but that allows you to store separate memory files for different areas. For example, if you have a portable and you travel, you may want memories for different cities that you travel to. For example, one might be if you travel to the West Coast, you may have a file that loads in all the repeaters in that area. And then a question is always how easy is it to change memories? And you'll find, I think, that it's not very difficult at all to do that. Norm liked my comment I see on the chat. And how do you want to organize your memories? Now, most of the handhelds and even mobile radios over the years use things like banks. Now, a lot of those same things can be programmed for different areas, also for different bands. And what's important to a lot of people, I know this was important to me, was that you may want to have the memories in the same order for both your portable, your handheld, as well as your mobile. And you always know that channel 10 is the GARS repeater, channel 20 is the Stone Mountain repeater, et cetera, et cetera. So that is helpful to do. This is always a an issue for folks that are getting started. One is front panel programming versus using programming software. And I'll refer back to something that Kyle said a long time ago with the radio that he had, which I think was probably a Yaesu FT60 handheld. And he was always making sure that he could program it directly on the front panel of the radio to make fast changes or quick additions in the field. And that is very important. While it is so easy to use programming software, you still, somewhere you're going to be caught out if your area's in some exercise or out in the middle of some deployment, and you'll need to change frequencies, and you'll forget how to do it on the front panel. And you won't always have a laptop or a computer and programming cable with you. However, a lot of times it's especially easy to set up initially on your radio with programming software. I see a good comment, Baofeng's may be an exception, and I think that's probably true. And I might say that's an exception in both directions, because the programming software and front panel programming are both quite difficult on some of the Chinese radios. There's several options for you on programming software. There are commercial programs that are out there. RT Systems is a company, and they're now based again here in Georgia, and offers programming software for just about every radio out there. On the other side of that, there is a program that's freeware called Chirp, and Chirp allows you to, one of the good features is that you can exchange programming files between different types of radios. So that is very easy, and that's free. Hams always love free software. But RT Systems is also one that is very good package commercially to use and purchase. Remember, you'll always need a programming cable. The software allows for easy changes and additions. Many times you can download certain configurations, like, for example, you want to download our repeaters in an area, and some of the software packages allow you to select an area and program and download and program your radio through that method. It's easy to save multiple versions. I know for all of my radios, I'll usually keep 2 or 3 previous versions of the software so that I could refer back to it. If, for example, I made a mistake and I want to go back one version that worked, I know that's always handy to do. Keep backup copies. That's a great way, because you're always going to mess up something either through front panel programming, something gets scrambled in the way that you tried to do it, and you always have that backup copy to lean back on. And again, it's free, and purchased programming software is available. And I mentioned a couple of examples of each. Chirp is a good free program, and RT Systems is one that as well. Now, I see a comment that they've been told that Chirp will brick some of the new Yaesu radios by overriding the firmware. I have not seen that. I have not heard that, but I can't vouch for whether that is the case. If someone else has any comments, you can post that on the chat as well. All right, let's talk about programming for some basic modes on the radios. The very basic mode is, of course, FM. That is what we'll use most of the time, and especially for a new ham, that's all the repeaters in the area. Question back on the software for Chirp. Chirp does not do DMR programming, to the best of my knowledge. Neither does RT Systems. When we talk about DMR, I'll make some comments, further comments on that. Now, what do you need to know for programming a radio just for standard FM operation? One, you need to know the output frequency of the repeater. You need to know the duplex direction, and that's either plus or minus, depending on where you are in the band, or VHF or UHF as well. The offset, which is usually 600 kilohertz for 2 meters and 5 megahertz for 70 centimeters. So typically what you'll see on the radio is plus 600 or minus 600 or plus 5 megahertz, minus 5 megahertz. Most repeaters operate with a tone that is transmitted along with it. So you need to know that tone frequency. Then you need to decide, do you want to use just tone on transmit, or do you want tone squelch as well, which means that your radio is looking for the repeater or the other station to send that tone over the air, and that is the only time if it receives that tone that will open up the squelch and let that come through. We've got an example right now with the GARS repeater. For some reason, it's still being investigated. Echolink is not being transmitted through the repeater with tone. So if you're running tone squelch, then you may not hear someone on Echolink. Now that's going to get changed, but that's the way it is right now. So for example, in the GARS repeater, you may just want to run tone on transmit, but not run tone squelch. Good question on the chat. Do any of the newer HT have auto tone detection on 2 and 70 centimeters? Yes, they do. They can actually detect which tone frequency that they are receiving. You'll usually have to dig into the manual on that to be able to find that. Another question or comment is, if you're registered on repeaterbook.com, you can export search results in various formats, including Chirp and RT systems. While we're on that subject, repeaterbook.com is an excellent resource for finding repeater frequencies in an area. It is very complete, and every one of these are not perfect. They will have errors, and you need to know or be on the lookout that since this is user-reported information for the most part, then you will need to know for sure if the information is valid. But in most cases, it is. All right. Let's see. Yes, Ray, if that is me that you're directing it to, you did get it right. All right, so that covers basic FM programming. Now, if you're just programming in VFO mode, that's just on the front dial. It's good to save your favorites to memory. So that's your basic FM programming. Now let's look at another type of radio. The ICOM, several ICOM models do D-Star, which is one of the digital modes. And there are 3 major digital modes, and I would say 5 pretty much available in the US. So what's different about programming for D-Star? Number one, you can program it just like before for FM, but if you want to use D-Star digital mode, you will still put in the output frequency, the duplex direction, and the offset. You do not need to program tone or operate tone or tone squelch because in digital mode, those aren't used. In addition to that, one time you'll have to set in your radio your call sign. And why do you do that? Well, a couple of reasons. One is that your call sign is actually transmitted every time that you press the push to talk button. So other stations can see that. The other reason is that some different modes or accessories within D-Star also use the call sign to validate you. For example, on reflectors, and reflectors are like giant conference bridges that links repeaters and other devices like hotspots together. You will also need your local repeater call sign and what module it's on, and typically that's going to be A, B, or C. A is typically 1.2 gigahertz, not available on the handhelds and most mobiles. B is for UHF, C is for VHF. So those are things that you can see in the programming software how those come into play. It looks like, by the way, I'll make the comment, we're up to 39 participants tonight, so very good. About half to 2/3 the size of our meeting, so we appreciate everyone coming out tonight. Now, in addition to manually programming it, a feature of most D-Star radios, which models are produced by ICOM and Kenwood, uh, you can just enter your own call sign right out of the box, turn on GPS so it knows where you are, and then you can use a function called nearest repeater. And the reason that works is because the radio comes out of the box from the factory with a sampling of repeaters all across the country. So most of the major repeaters in an area, or at least 2 or 3 of them in a major area, will be listed. So you can get on the air immediately without having to do any special programming. Now, beyond that, as I said, the radio comes with a repeater list out of the box as soon as you open up and get on the air. The repeater list can be updated from some websites, and the good one for D-Star is dstarinfo.com, and that will let you load files, load a mode called DR mode, which allows you to select very easily without a lot of programming where you want to go, what you want to do, what you want to connect to. And one of those things would be to change reflectors. And again, I said a reflector is like a conference bridge for repeaters, and they're linked together. So with that, let me see. Does D-Star adversely affect using DRATs? A good question. On some of the older or earlier D-Star radios, you did have to disable GPS to run DRATs because that goes over the data side of the signal. Now, the newer ones, I don't think you need to do that. And one of the features in DRATs, which let me explain, DRATs is kind of a Swiss Army knife program for using D-Star data, the data capabilities within that. That the GPS function would be used for map data, which is included showing your position, etc., in DRATs. K4KKF also says you can find out a lot more information on DRATs on D-Star Info as well. And if you will look on the initial homepage tabs, you'll see a tab for DRATs, and that'll give you a lot more information. Another question is, does D-Star do SMS? Well, there is a short message capability in it called DPRS. You can do a couple of things with it. Number one, with the radio itself, you can put in a short message, and I do mean short, that is transmitted along with your call sign. If you turn that message on, now it might be just as easily programmed in there as just your location, like Lawrenceville, Georgia, and the radio that you're on. It's not very long. If you use DPRS, it will also transmit your position. And then using programs like DRATs, then you can do messaging, you can transfer files, and you can show position as well. So no, I'm not looking at the camera, Norm. I'm looking at my screen to to be able to know the slides. It kind of does an SMS, not quick to enter, but multiple can be preloaded. It's transmitted every time you key. So getting some good information off the chat as well. Let me move on to the next one. Let's talk about Fusion. Fusion is a digital mode that was developed by Yaesu, and they have several models that will transmit both FM and Fusion. System Fusion is its full name for that. So what do you need to know about the programming? Well, you're going to need those basic things again, and especially for FM, like in any of the radios, you will transmit the tone, frequency, and either transmit on tone or tone squelch for FM. Now, if you are operating in the digital mode, Fusion mode, you can change the mode of the radio to DN or DW, and that is digital narrow or digital wide. And then that puts it in C4FM digital mode, which if you're transmitting in that, it can only be received on another System Fusion radio that's operating in that mode. A lot of similarities with D-Star. You do not have data capabilities. Well, you do have limited. Good question. Are there any active Yaesu System Fusion repeaters in Gwinnett? I've never had any luck raising them. Actually, GARS does operate one on 444.525 from our Snellville location. It is a System Fusion transmitting repeater, and it is on the, it's linked to one of the rooms. And again, on rooms in System Fusion, that's another way of saying like reflectors. They're rooms where people can connect together, either repeaters or what's called wires X together. We actually have at least a couple of them around. The one in Snellville, the GARS operated one, is linked to the room called America's Link. And then we also have a repeater on Gwinnett Medical Center as well. Now it operates in mixed mode. So if you operate FM mode, it will transmit and operate FM. And then if you transmit on System Fusion, the repeater will switch over and use that as well. So yes, we do have a couple of repeaters within the county, and System Fusion is gaining in popularity. So you're seeing more and more of that as well. Any other questions on System Fusion? Now, I see a question here that Paul has used System Fusion on hotspot only, not through a repeater. Let me mention just a little bit about hotspots before we go too far with this. Hotspots are a great way that if you're either not within range of a repeater or do not want to go through a repeater, these are like a simple, almost like we had hotspots, like a wireless router. And they connect to the internet either through your phone or home internet, and then they will operate. And most of the new hotspots will operate in multiple digital modes. They will not operate FM, to my knowledge, but they will operate D-Star, System Fusion, DMR, P25, and NXDN. And we'll cover DMR on the next slide as well. So that's a great way also to get on one of the digital modes. And there are several hotspots that are out there. There's probably half a dozen great ones. The hotspot was actually created by someone right here in the Atlanta area, Robin Cutshaw, AA4RC, created what was called the, it first came out with the dongle, and then came out with another version that had an RF chip in it. So it gave you a radio hotspot around. Now there's different versions now, and some of the newer ones, you'll see the OpenSpot 3, you'll see the Zoom Spot, and many others that you can do as well. So with that, let's move on from Fusion to DMR. DMR stands for Digital Mobile Radio. It is based on a European digital radio standard, where in the US, most public safety is based on the P25 or APCO 25, Project 25 standard. DMR was developed in the European Union as a digital mobile radio standard. Now in the US, or actually in other parts of the country as well, how DMR was only used for commercial standards, but it has been migrated over to amateur radio bands. Initially, a lot of it was done with Motorola repeaters, and Motorola, like they do with a lot of different things, they'll always add a little bit of their proprietary stuff onto a standard, which DMR is an open standard, like D-Star. And so they call that Moto Turbo. But most people have really gone with a more generic name, and they call it DMR. And there's a lot of different radios available for that. What really made DMR popular, because in the early days, you had to get a Motorola or a Hytera radio, were two of the major brands, and you were still paying hundreds of dollars for those. The Chinese got into it, and the first one was from Connect Systems, and they came out with a around a $200 portable radio. and those got cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And the brand that's shown right here, Titera, kind of a takeoff on the name Hytera, which is the more commercial grade one. Some of these Chinese radios are down, well, I'd say as little as $50. So that really helped the popularity of DMR. There are quite a few DMR repeaters in the Atlanta area and nationwide as well. Right in the immediate area, we do have one. I started to say, we didn't have one in Gwinnett County, but there's one in the Snellville area. There is one out in between, which is between Snellville and Monroe. There's one on Sawney Mountain over in the Cumming area, and there's one north of Gainesville on Waka Mountain. Now, DMR is, the radios will do FM, so you do the same things as you program for any of the FM radios. Then you add a few other things to actually get into to make it transmit in the DMR digital mode. You need to know a few things. One is the color code, which there are several color codes you use. You need to match the color code that is being transmitted and received by a particular repeater. You need to know the talk group number. Talk groups are something that's introduced in commercial trunking systems, and you need to know that because you can actually transmit multiple talk groups on a radio through the same repeater, some at the same time. And you create a zone to group those together. Now, the programming has not been made as easy for a DMR radio, but what a lot of people do, while the software, say, comes with a Titera radio, you just won't know out of the box how to set up what's called a code plug, which is a memory file that is programmed in the radio. But what a lot of people do to get on DMR quickly is they will share code plugs. So if you get in some of the local groups like groups.io or some of the older groups for DMR in particular, people will share. I've got a code plug for the Atlanta area, and that helps them get on the air pretty quickly. There's a DMR net which has started up just in the last couple of months. It's on Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock, I believe it is, and it's on several of the local area repeaters in the metro Atlanta area. So you can get on, you can learn about DMR, you can talk to other folks on DMR, and that works very well. There are a number of Chinese radios that are available, and again, they're in the sub-$100 category usually. I purchased, and it's not the radio I purchased, but one just like it that I purchased at the last Dagenham convention that is dual band. It's VHF, UHF. Some of the early DMR radios were just UHF only because the new repeaters could get frequencies in the UHF band. Yes, so that is, I thought that was on the Metro Atlanta talk group, but it must be on the Georgia statewide. So it looks like that's where the Wednesday night DMR net is. So you'll program that in for the Georgia statewide talk group. Okay. Any more on DMR? Any more questions? Definitely worth exploring. Yep, does start at 8 o'clock on Wednesday evenings. All right, let's talk a little bit about programming software. You either have free or purchase software. The free software, a great example of that is Chirp. Chirp is available for most FM radios. It's actually one of the better ways to program some of the Chinese radios, the inexpensive Chinese radios. And some manufacturers also offer their own software that comes with a radio. But Chirp is actually a very good one that they keep adding keep adding other radios that can be programmed with it. Now on the purchase software side, RT Systems, I think, is one of the better packages that's available. The folks behind RT Systems, again, they started in Georgia, they moved to Colorado, but now the principals of that company have moved back to Georgia. And Rod Thompson, who I think does most of the programming for that, is based right here in Georgia, down in the LaGrange area. It is a reasonably priced software package. They offer a lot of cables for a lot of different radios, and it does allow for easy copying. You can have, for example, a standard file, and then use that same file for multiple radios, so that, again, what we said earlier, that you're looking for kind of the same layout of the memories. Channel 10 is always GARS, channel 11 is this, in every radio that you use. That makes that a lot easier to do. So RT Systems is one of them that it's pretty inexpensive relative to the price of the radios, etc. But it's very good, very versatile, and they're always updating it as well. You also have the ability within the RT Systems software to download certain files, both for digital rate, not for, well, for D-Star, but not DMR. I've not used it for Fusion, so not sure about it, but I think they do have, well, they do have software, I know, for Fusion capable radios, so very good on that. So that's the programming software that's available. Some of the manufacturers, when you buy a radio, you have access to download their software, so you can use it. I think Kenwood, I know for sure, ICOM, and I'm guessing that Yaesu does as well, but it's been a while since I've looked at any of their software, so I'm not sure on that. Okay, any questions on the programming software? All right, let's open it up for any questions that you have. I'll go ahead and drop my screen, and there I see some faces again. Any questions? Let me get back on the chat screen.